remember being a child, sitting quietly and wondering about things that seemed far too large for a child to understand. Why are we here? Why do certain dreams feel more real than waking life? Why do certain symbols like a guiding tree in a story or imaginary friend that comforts us appear? As children, we ask these questions without fully understanding them. We do not yet know which questions are considered practical and which are considered impossible. We simply wonder. As adults, many of us lose that capacity. We become occupied with careers, responsibilities, and survival. Yet some thinkers spent their entire lives preserving that childlike curiosity. One of those thinkers was Carl Jung. Jung was one of the 20th century's greatest psychologists, but that description misses something important. He was also an explorer of the inner world. While others studied the mechanics of the mind, Jung studied its mysteries. What happens to us as we grow up? Most of us assume that growing older automatically means becoming more complete. Jung suggested something different. He believed that childhood begins with a kind of natural wholeness. Curiosity, imagination, no mask yet. But as we grow, we are taught what is acceptable. We learn to hide anger, hide vulnerability, even hide creativity. Jung called this the mask or the persona. It's useful, but it isn't the whole self. The parts we bury away become our shadow. Jung's warning is that what's unconscious doesn't stay quiet. It leaks out. We overreact without knowing why. We judge others for what we secretly carry, often because others reflect what we have yet to recognize in ourselves. Jung didn't think the answer was to kill the shadow or to throw away the mask. His goal was balance. We need to slowly become aware of what's hidden. Ask the uncomfortable questions. What parts of me have I hidden just to be accepted? What dreams have I abandoned? What emotions am I afraid to feel? This process Jung called individuation. Not becoming someone new, but becoming whole. Long before Jung, Schopenhauer argued that beneath our conscious thoughts lies a deeper force, the will, driving endless desire and striving. He thought suffering comes from being trapped in that restless force. His remedy was quieting it. Through detachment, we could transcend this endless striving through art, music, beauty, and contemplation. Jung admired that insight, but he took a step further. Instead of escaping what's hidden, he said explore it. Instead of fearing the shadow, integrate it. Perhaps maturity isn't about becoming someone entirely different from the child we were, but recovering the authenticity we lost under years of conditioning, while keeping the wisdom adulthood can bring. Both believed that meaning often emerges from depths we do not fully understand. And both challenged the increasingly mechanical view of humanity that was emerging in the modern world. As Jung himself famously wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." As I reflect on these thinkers, I often return to the perspective of the child, not because children possess all the answers, but because they possess something equally valuable: openness. A child can stand beneath a night sky and feel awe without embarrassment. They can ask impossible questions without fear and live comfortably in mystery. Thinkers such as Maria Montessori also recognized the extraordinary nature of childhood. Long before modern neuroscience confirmed just how remarkable the developing brain is, Montessori argued that children are not empty vessels waiting to be filled with facts. They are born with an innate curiosity, an intense desire to explore, and a natural drive to understand the world around them. Watch a young child for just a few minutes. They constantly ask questions. They touch, taste, build, dismantle, experiment, and observe. Every experience becomes an opportunity to learn. For Montessori, this wasn't simply childish behavior. It was the mind doing exactly what it had evolved to do. She believed that children possess what she called an absorbent mind, capable of effortlessly taking in language, movement, social behavior, and an astonishing amount of information from their environment during the early years of life. Rather than forcing children into a rigid educational mold, Montessori believed the role of parents and teachers was to create an environment that allowed this natural curiosity to flourish. Education, she argued, should not be about controlling the child's mind or filling it with predetermined answers. Instead, it should inspire exploration, independence, creativity, and a lifelong love of discovery. She often spoke of following the child rather than directing them. Instead of asking, "How do we make this child learn?" Montessori asked a different question: what is the child naturally trying to discover? That subtle shift changes everything. It transforms education from the transfer of information into the cultivation of human potential. Likewise, the developmental psychologist Jean Piaget showed that children do not simply absorb knowledge passively. They actively construct their understanding of the world through exploration, experimentation, and wonder. Every question they ask, every game they invent, and every problem they solve helps them build an increasingly sophisticated picture of reality. He felt learning was not about memorizing facts. It was a process of discovery. Children learn by interacting with the world, testing their ideas, making mistakes, and constantly reshaping their understanding as they encounter new experiences. In different ways, Montessori, Piaget, and Jung all remind us that growth begins with curiosity. The child is not merely a stage we pass through. The child represents a way of engaging with reality, a willingness to explore, to question, to be transformed. As I look back on my own life, I find myself wondering whether children arrive with a connection to something greater that adults tend to lose. You can call it universal consciousness, the mind of the cosmos, or simply God. That idea echoes through philosophy, mysticism, and even some corners of science. Perhaps wonder itself is one of our most powerful forces. It drives discovery, inspires art, fuels philosophy. It reminds us that the search for meaning is not a problem to be solved, but a journey, a bridge. And perhaps, if we are fortunate, we never completely leave that bridge behind.